Okay, colleagues, we've got about 2 minutes and we'll start. I don't know if we're showing up anywhere or not. So, Tanya, we're ready to go. We're live in a minute.
That's correct. Ready to go whenever you are.
Okay, it being 5 o'clock, colleagues, I will call to order this council meeting of April the 12th. And we are doing it virtually. And thank you to everybody for accommodating us and to staff for making sure that we've got technology to support us. I'm going to begin with our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Ashbeg. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. And I then ask that we observe a moment of silence so that council staff and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community that we are trying to serve. Thank you, colleagues. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. I'd ask if there is any declaration of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof of anything that's on the agenda that has been circulated. Madam Clerk, please note that none was recorded. We will then move on to our minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes, the March 22nd special council meeting and the regular council meeting of the same date. I will look for a mover. Sherry is moving, Anita is seconding. Any comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to our deputations. Our first one is a pleasant task. We have a new staff member to introduce. And Angie, are you going to do the honors?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you very much. Sorry, I've got a motorcycle in the background here. Apologize. Yeah, it's great to introduce Lily Morrow. There you are, Lily. Nice to see you. Lily actually has a lot of relevant experience. She was recently working for Huron County remotely as their climate change and energy specialist. She's got a master's of environmental and sustainability degree, and she did her undergrad at Trent. She lives in Selwyn, so she was really happy to get an opportunity to work locally in her municipality. She's been with us for about a week now, and she's got a big long list of of duties, and she's fitting in just wonderfully. So it's great to have her on board.
Well, thank you very much, and just be cautious of that phrase, other duties as assigned. But it's wonderful to have you aboard, and we look forward to working with you. And if you have any comments you'd like to make, Lily, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. I just want to say good evening, Mayor and members of council. It's really great having the opportunity to virtually meet you all this evening. I'm really looking forward to working for Selwyn Township and helping advance the township's climate change and sustainability goals. And hopefully I'll have the opportunity to meet you all in person someday soon.
Well, we all are looking forward to that day when we can all do that. So thank you. And again, it's great to have you aboard. Thanks. Okay, colleagues, we'll move on to our second delegation. I believe Peter, I think I saw Peter there, and Jean is just climbing up. There's Peter. And they are going to, is there just the two of you, I guess, right, for tonight? And you're going to talk about off-road vehicles. And then after you've made your presentation, I think Janice has done a report. I'll ask her to comment in the report, and then I will turn it over to council. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours. I don't know who's going to lead off, but
thank you, Mr. Mayor, and we'll be doing the honors this evening, and I will certainly be calling on Mr. Nielsen at points if there are questions that are best directed to him. So thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen at this point. I'm assuming that that is the appropriate course of action.
here we go. It's up.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you. So this evening's presentation is to provide Township Council with an update on the off-road vehicle use on county roads initiative that the County of Peterborough has been underway with for a little bit of time now. Our presentation this evening is just going to review for members of council the county's decision-making process that has guided the recommendations that you're going to be seeing this evening. Talk a little bit about what our recommended strategy is and sort of its status at this point in time vis-a-vis the county's council's direction to our team. Talk a little bit about the process that we've used in terms of defining the off-road vehicle network, because it does play a role in the conversation. Talk a little bit about what consultation that we have done and are continuing to do. Talk about if there are any potential refinements, and then finish off with our next steps. So back in, I guess it was June of 2021, County Council adopted the decision-making process that's illustrated on your screen. So the 6-stage process has guided our work in terms of addressing the question of off-road vehicle use on county roads. We are now in the throes of stage 5. We have presented a recommended strategy to County Council, and we've received some direction in terms of next steps, and that involves reaching out further to the lower tier municipalities, including the township of Selwyn. So in our recommendations to County Council in, I guess it was in December of last year in 2021, we recommended that the county, in terms of considering the use of ORVs on county roads, adopt what we've referred to as approach or alternative 2, whereby the county would permit the use of off-road vehicles on select county roads. We looked at alternatives that would have permitted ORV use on all county roads, or prohibiting ORV use on all county roads. But after a comparative assessment of the various benefits and costs attributed to the different alternatives, our analysis showed that alternative 2 offered the greatest benefit at the least cost to the county. So with this alternative, it is in essence sort of a derivation of the status quo today, because the county does permit ORV use on some select roads in Havelock, Belmont, Methuen already. So it wouldn't be completely new ground, but it is contemplate the use of ORVs on more county roads than is currently permitted. Now, with our recommended strategy, we did include some complementary actions that went along with our recommended strategy. So I'll talk a little bit, just a second, about sort of the location of where ORVs may be permitted on county roads, but thought just first touch on what the complementary actions are and our assessment of some of the potential financial impacts of moving forward with alternative 2. So we had identified that there were a few actions that the county should take in conjunction with adopting alternative 2. One is to update the off-road vehicle bylaw. It is a few years old now, and basically the structure of the bylaw, as I mentioned, does contemplate the use of ORVs on select county roads currently. So what we would be looking to do through the bylaw update is, one, add in any additional county roads that are going to be contemplated for use for ORVs. And secondly, there does need to be some text edits to the bylaw to reflect changes in legislation that have happened over the past couple of years that have occurred since the bylaw was last updated. Secondly, we've recommended that there be some more detailed evaluation and assessment of county roads that are being contemplated for ORV use. Obviously, we're making recommendation as to potential county roads that would be used or would be permitted for ORV use, but to have a more fulsome assessment of the condition of those roads to put the county in a better position should there be any concerns about liability expressed, and just ensuring that there is a more comprehensive improvement program that might be in place once the bylaw is amended. We also recommended the development of a public education and communication program, recognizing that the conditions around the use of ORVs varies around the county, as well as the fact that the law has changed considerably in the past couple of years with regards to ORV use on public roads. So it was felt that there needs to be some communication to the public to ensure that everybody completely understands, or at least understands the regime around the use of off-road vehicles on public roads. And then finally, the possibility of forming an off-road vehicle advisory committee to help provide council some advice in terms of future ORV use issues. Now, in our assessment of Alternative 2, we did acknowledge that there are some potential financial impacts associated with council's adoption of Alternative 2. We looked at the impacts, and to be frank, a number of these impacts had been raised through the consultation process that we undertook in coming to the recommendation. So we're responding to a great degree some of the concerns and comments that we heard through the process of developing the recommendations around ORV use on county roads. So as mentioned, enforcement was one that was on a lot of people's minds in terms of the potential costs associated with permitting more ORV use on county roads and the potential costs associated with that from an enforcement perspective. And I guess one of the things that we concluded is that none of the alternatives avoids the cost of enforcement, because whether you permit or you don't permit ORVs, there will be a need to enforce whatever that regulation is. So there's no way to completely avoid the cost associated with enforcement, but it's very difficult to predict with any certainty the amount of enforcement that may be required to regulate the county's bylaw that would be changed to allow ORV use on select roads. But we did provide county council some different scenarios around the potential financial impacts associated with enforcement, recognizing fully that that is a lower tier municipal responsibility, and it typically wouldn't fall within the county's bailiwick to pay the costs associated with enforcement, as that is a lower tier municipal responsibility. We did acknowledge that there would be costs associated with improving roadways and maintaining them to allow ORV use. At present, there are certain sections of county road that have shoulders that are less than desirable for ORV use, or may have certain features that make, say, site visibility a bit of a challenge. So there would be the need to make associated road improvements to facilitate the use of ORVs on county roads. Insurance was a question and a comment that came up on a number of occasions through the consultation process. There was certainly concern amongst members of council, both at the lower tier municipality level, we've heard through the various presentations we've done, as well as at county council about the potential liability associated with allowing ORV use on county roads. I guess our first point is that immediately there would not be a change in cost associated with insurance, because there's no specific policy addition or no specific provisions whereby the municipality declares that they need the insurance for ORV use. It's part of the public right-of-way use, so it would fall under that realm. But there is the potential that should there be incidents that the county or other municipalities may be called into question And given the joint and several liability, there may be some consequences from that perspective. But at present, adopting this recommendation doesn't change the insurance regime for the county. As mentioned, there are those complementary actions that I made reference to earlier that are part of our recommendations for the strategy. There would be a cost associated with those, as well as that there might be some additional staff resources, depending on the extent of the bylaw requirements that may be incurred to manage the bylaw on the county's behalf. So we presented our report to County Council on December the 15th. And at that time, we were given some direction in terms of our next steps, in terms of dealing with the use of ORVs on county roads. From this resolution, there's sort of three important points. One is that in principle, County Council has endorsed the allowance of ORVs on select county roads, something that hadn't previously been acknowledged by County Council. But obviously, it is in principle subject to the second point, which is the consultation with the lower tier municipalities regarding ORV use on in their townships as well as on township roads. And then finally, the expectation is that council would receive a report this spring on sort of the direction forward on ORV use. I'm just going to talk for a few moments about the question of sort of how we've defined the off-road vehicle network and what refinements could be possible, and recognizing again in Selwyn it isn't per se an issue at this point in time because there are no county roads identified within Selwyn for ORV use, but just so that council is aware of the process that was followed to come up with that recommendation. So we followed and we continue to follow as we sort of do further refinements to the ORV network, a three-step process whereby we conduct a quantitative assessment that looks at each of the individual county road segments based on a series of criteria, which I'll share in just a second, to see if they meet a minimum score. And if they meet that minimum score, then they are candidates for ORV use. Then we take that subset of county road segments, do a more qualitative assessment that looks at more from a network-wide perspective, what makes sense, and we look at features that aren't necessarily quantifiable, and look at those factors and try to make sense of is there a network of routes that's possible, and then in step 3 we refine that network to come up with what we have before you in terms of where we're at with the ORV network. So as I mentioned, there was a series of quantitative assessment criteria. Again, they were all things that we could put a number against, and it was data that the county had readily available, mostly related to speeds and volumes of traffic and collision history. Anything that scored over 50% based on those criteria was carried forward for further evaluation. So when we looked at Selwyn specifically, we noted that there were a few roads that, again, tend to be higher volume, higher speeds, that really are not great candidates for ORV use. So those are identified in red on the map that's on the screen. And basically, it sort of eliminated a number of potential road sections within Selwyn that might be candidates for ORV use. So then we take the list of roads that are left over, the gray ones, and we do a qualitative assessment based on a series of factors. As you can see, they range from primarily for access reasons. So whether it's access to existing trails, whether it's access to population centers to obtain fuel, food, things of that nature, whether you want to try to avoid specific land uses. So those were the factors that we took into consideration and did a further refinement of the network and came up with the conceptual network plan, which we presented about a year ago, a little over a year ago, which is illustrated on the right of your screen, shows the route network throughout the county in terms of sort of what made sense in terms of connecting together various destinations to ensure that there was a relatively connected network available for ORV use. As you can see, there were no specific routes that were identified in Selwyn. There are ones that come to your doorstep, but none that actually come within the township. So that's currently the network plan that we're working with. We spent the last few months working with the other lower tier municipalities within the county to look at refinements to the network plan. So for the most part, we've had some very productive conversations with your other lower tier municipalities within the county to help refine the network. There are still a few that we're working with to come through in terms of next steps. So just a very brief, sort of update in terms of what we've been doing with our consultation process per county council's direction in December. So we have met with staff from all of the lower tier municipalities, as well as representatives from the First Nations communities within Peterborough County. We went through a fairly similar exercise with them in terms of discussing the recommended strategy and any potential network refinements. Basically, what we've heard from most is that there tends to be support for alternative 2, but there were a few instances where they felt there needed to be some refinements or additions to the network to address concerns about route continuity or coverage of the network within their townships. We have, as well as part of this, reached out to adjacent municipalities. The one that is probably of most interest to you is Kawartha Lakes. Obviously, there's a need to ensure coordination between municipalities that abut the county, because we want to make sure that what you do locally within the county, has consideration for what's happening outside and vice versa. So we've reached out to the city of Kawartha Lakes. You may or may not be aware, but they're conducting a 2-year pilot of select ORV routes within the city, but none of the routes actually comes towards the boundaries of the county, especially in this area. So there's nothing abutting Selwyn from Kawartha Lakes that we had to have consideration for as we went through our process. So finally, our next steps is that we are awaiting a few responses from the lower tier municipalities. We have most of them now, save and except obviously your deliberations this evening. There are a few comments that we do need to address as a result of the feedback that we've received from the other lower tier municipalities. And we'll reflect that into the recommended strategy that we will be presenting in an updated form to the Transportation Master Plan Steering Committee and County Council, with the full objective of having this matter before them again before Council summer recess. So with that, Mr. Mayor, happy to answer any questions that your members of Council may have this evening.
Just before I turn it over to council, I know that Janice did a report. Janice, did you want to add anything to what Jean said?
No, I think with respect to the process that the county has gone through, I think Jean's covered it very well. Thanks, Jean and Peter for coming tonight to make that presentation. I appreciate it. I think really, as was noted, it really does represent basically a status quo on the county roads in the township of Selwyn, which makes sense based on the assessment that was done from the qualitative and quantitative approach. I guess I did just want to just speak to the overall on township roads. So I think, as council will recall, the provincial legislation did change effective January 1st of 2021, wherein it used to be that we would have had to prohibit ORV use on any township, permit ORV use on any township road. As of January 1st, 2021, the province changed that legislation and just flipped it. So ORV use on township roads would be permitted unless we specifically prohibit it. At that time, knowing that the county was going through this process and this review, for sure we felt it was important to understand what that review concluded before moving forward with any changes with respect to the township roads. Certainly since that time, we really haven't been experiencing issues related to the change in provincial legislation. We do monitor for that, but we really haven't experienced any issues to date. In terms of the process moving forward, as Jean outlined a bit, It's my understanding that the report will go back before county council, and that county council would be considering it later in 2022 ultimately. So I think beyond that point, we would be in a position if council wanted to have any consideration of any changes on township roads, that it would be beyond that point that we'd have that consideration. And of course, we would monitor for any issues in the meantime. So certainly, from my perspective, I would recommend to council that we do advise the county that we don't have any objection to the proposed network and to the proposed alternative 2 that is being put forward.
Thank you, Janice. I saw Donna's hand up first.
Yes, thank you very much. Through you to Peter and Jean, thank you very much for the presentation. I was just wondering, when you do decide which roads you will allow ORVs on, would it be the police that would be doing the enforcement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Valentine, it would inevitably be the police that would be responsible. They're enforcing under the Highway Traffic Act. As when off-road vehicles are on public roads, they fall under the regulations pursuant to the Highway Traffic Act. So it would be police services that would have the responsibility for that.
Okay, thank you. And I just have one other question. I know you'll be doing maps and you'll be putting information on the website, but to me, it would be quite confusing as to which roads I would be allowed on and which I wouldn't. I just wonder, are you going to put up any signage? I know that's expensive, but I just wanted to ask the question.
I'll let Mr. Nielsen answer that one.
Thank you, Jean. We have, through the chair, we have had some preliminary discussions with our Transportation Master Plan Steering Committee with respect to the need for signage. There hasn't been a final decision developed yet as to how we might approach that. Unfortunately, there are no design standards per se that we can refer to. So that's an issue we'll have to tackle yet. But certainly as part of a public education program, we anticipate the need to have some form of signage in place on road to indicate yay or nay when driving down a road, can you operate an ORV on this particular road section. So that's an issue yet to be tackled.
Thank you very much.
Here, Jerry.
Thank you, through you. Thank you, Jean and Peter, for the report. As an avid snowmobiler slash four-wheeler slash just like blowing money on gas, riding around aimlessly. I know up in Havelock, north of there in HBM, I think it's fantastic. The trails are great up there. There are already road uses there. We are blessed and we are cursed at the same time here in Selwyn because of the geography where we are. We can't access any trails such as Trent Lakes can, just above it. The biggest thing for the county going forward, and I'm fine with doing the Selwyn thing as it is because we're pooched. But the biggest thing for the county, I think everybody needs to realize, is just the economic impact of these sporting sports, if you will, or outdoor activities. Whereas snowmobiling's anywhere between 4 and 6 billion, B as in boy, a year. ATVing anywhere between 1 and 2 billion, depending on what kind of report you read. So anytime you can grab some money for the county, what's good for the county is always good for Selwyn too. So I like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jean and Peter. I agree with what Jerry was saying with regards to the economic benefits of allowing ORVs. I had actually just this past weekend, I had somebody asking me about if they were allowed in Lakefield in the village proper. And I said, no, it's not allowed in village proper. Do you have any idea on whether county roads within the township of Selwyn at some point would be identified for ORV use? I know in your presentation, you said that at the current time, there's no roads identified, but I think it would be interesting if at some point down the road, if there's suitable roads for ORV use.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, Councillor Locke, we've been focused on sort of the here and now. So we haven't really spent a lot of time sort of forecasting out what may happen in the future. I would offer two comments. One is that one of the big reasons why Selwyn doesn't have a lot of candidate roads is traffic volumes and speeds. And I only anticipate that's probably going to get worse over time. So it's unlikely that there may be more candidates as a result of that. The second point, though, on the contrary of that, is that if something happened in the city of Kawartha Lakes or in a adjacent municipality where it made sense for a connection to be formed, then, or there was some sort of land use or some sort of development in Selwyn that was a destination or was then, that would be cause for reconsideration. But at this point in time, I wouldn't envision it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see any. So I think what we need then, Dennis, is just a motion to receive the presentation and your report, right? So Gary's moving, Anita is seconding it. Any further discussion? No, all those in favor? That's carried. Jean, Peter, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are actually right on time. This is amazing. 5:30 for a public meeting, and it is 5:30. So I am going to call the public meeting to order, and I'm going to ask Per to announce the meeting, the purpose of why we are here, and then we will proceed. And just before Per starts, so Per will make his announcement. He's going to have a chance to make a presentation. Then I'm going to call on the county planner to add to that if they wish. I'll then ask for those in favor of the application to speak. I'll then give the floor for anybody that wants to speak against the application or may have a question. I ask you to be succinct. And then I will turn it over to council. So that's, I know we've got some people on the line that may not do this that often, so I just thought I'd run through the procedure. And with that, I'll ask Per to announce the purpose of the meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. Everybody, anybody that has questions, presentation, I am having a bit of sound problem here.
Per, I'm going to interrupt you. Per, I'm going to interrupt you. Your internet connection is not sufficient. You're breaking up. I don't know if you're at the office or whether you're at where you are.
All right, I'm gonna back in.
Okay, sign out and then come back in, and we'll just pause for a moment, colleagues. And I don't know whether Tanya or Angie can give Per a hand.
Yeah, and you're just trying to connect with him.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, he's going to come and use my computer. It's
Okay.
Angie. Yeah, just give us 1 sec.
Yeah, no problem. Take your time. Just do what you have to do. There you go.
All right, can everybody hear me? I've switched over. I'm now Angela.
Yes, and crystal clear, I must say, too.
Okay, very good. All right, so the purpose of the meeting. So the County of Peterborough and the Township of Selwyn are tonight holding a joint public meeting to consider amendments to the local component of the County of Peterborough official plan as well as the Township of Sullivan Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw in accordance with Section 17 and 34 of the Planning Act. The prescribed notice of public meeting was provided by first-class prepaid mail to all residents within a 120-meter radius of the subject property regarding the application, as well as by a sign being posted on the subject lands. Notices were also available on the county and township websites, and the notice was also published in the Peterborough Examiner. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or this public meeting, or make a written submission to the County of Peterborough with respect to the official plan amendment, or to the Township of Selwyn with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment before the county or township make a decision in respect to the official plan amendment or the zoning bylaw amendment, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the County of Peterborough or the Council of the Township of Selwyn to the Ontario Land Tribunal, nor can a person or public body be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So having said that, tonight's meeting is about 187 Killdeer Lane. I did actually have just the severance sketch. I was going to share my screen up back at my computer, but we'll forego that due to technical difficulties here. So like I said, the property is at 187 Killdeer Lane, which is part lot 3, concession 9. Oh, one thing before I go too far down the road here. I think Andy did mention, I had a bit of poor quality sound there, that we have Keziah Holden and Melanie Menon with us from the County Planning Department, who will follow my presentation. And we also have Jim Whalen with us, who is a member of County Council, attending with us to represent County Council tonight. Okay, so continuing on. This is part lot 3, concession 9 in the Ennismore ward. The subject lands are currently designated rural and zoned rural. The proposal is to rezone the subject property and redesignate the property so the zone will be rural residential and the designation will be lakeshore residential. And the OPA and ZBA are necessary in order to facilitate a proposed severance of the subject property. This is just a one lot severance. The severed parcel is going to be approximately 2.83 hectares with a lot frontage of plus or minus 27 meters. A special exception zone is being proposed in order to address the deficient lot frontage for the rural residential zone for the severed parcel. And the retained parcel is 1.32 hectares or 3.3 acres with a lot frontage of about 102 meters. So it meets the requirements of the rural residential zone. I generally find that in my planning report, I addressed that the proposal conforms to the county official plan, the township official plan generally, other than the proposed amendment. We're also consistent with the provincial policy statement, as well as conforming to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. We do have some comments from the neighbors that have been submitted. I did not have time to address those comments in my planning report prior to the meeting, as they were submitted after the report was written. But we have comments from, let me just flip to it here, a Miss Cardoza. This one I have responded to via email. She was concerned about water supply as well as property values. I can only say that with regard to water supply for the new severed lot, that during pre-consultation for this OPA and ZBA, it was identified that a full hydrogeological study was not going to be required. And instead it was requested that the well report for the existing well on the subject property be submitted for review by the county and township. It reveals that the existing well is performing at 5 gallons per minute, which is, in my opinion, sufficient. As a general best practice, well drillers recommend that wells supply at least 3 gallons per minute for a single detached dwelling. And given the 5 gallons per minute at this well, it's my opinion that similar performance can be had from a future drilled well for the severed lot. This should be noted too that the severed lot is somewhat lower elevation than where the existing residence is on the subject property. With regard to property values, it's not a matter under the Planning Act to be considered. But having said that, my response to Ms. Cardoza did outline that affordable housing, of course, is a concern for both the province and the township. And we do have zoning permissions for higher density housing forms, particularly in Lakefield. And we also do have our second unit policies to promote affordable housing options within our township. We also have comments, a couple of comments, email comments from another neighbor who I think is with us tonight, Mr. Salerno. He have one letter and an email, and I'll try and sort of combine the issues that were highlighted in those, or I'll highlight the issues that he brings up in those two emails. One of the concerns is what he wants to know what's happening with the barn on the proposed severed lot. I have confirmed with the property owner that that barn is going to be removed. And so what we'll do to address that is through the severance application, when it's processed and it comes to the county for comment, that we'll be requesting the removal of that barn as a condition of the severance. He also asked about whether shrubbery or fencing will be required. And the answer to that is no, it's not required under the zoning bylaw where adjacent properties are both for residential use. So it would be entirely up to either of the property owners whether they want to erect some kind of fencing or put in some kind of landscaping. Mr. Salerno also asked about what's a reasonable timeline for building on the severed lot. I would say, and maybe the county has some input on this too, but given that, you know, even after tonight and approving the zoning amendment, there's still the official plan amendment to be approved. So there's some time frame in there, as well as the processing of the severance application. And then also obtaining building permits. That's, I would say you're likely looking at least a year to build out for construction activity on the new lot. There's also something about here about occupancy in a trailer while building is in progress. I believe our zoning bylaw and our building department can allow temporary occupation in a trailer for during construction activity. Obviously, we have prohibitions on living in a trailer on a full-time basis, but in support of construction to build a house, that's something that can be permitted on a temporary basis. Then he has questions about the potential for a home-based business which may increase traffic potential. I can only say that home occupations are permitted within the rural residential zone. Generally, these are to be home occupations are to be restricted to sort of administrative type uses and by the occupant of the residence only. So I don't foresee that it will increase traffic to any great degree if some type of home-based business was to occur on the new severed parcel. I addressed the barn. He asked about the barn again. Can additional severances be requested? Just explaining a little bit further, I'm jumping ahead to the public comments a little bit, but the reason that the official plan amendment and zoning amendment, particularly the official plan amendment, is necessary is that our current severance rules require that the remnant parcel from the severance in the rural designation be a minimum of 20 hectares. And this property is already much smaller than that. So keeping it in the rural designation would not allow for a severance to go forward. So we're moving it into the Lakeshore residential designation where the maximum number of severances would be 2. So potentially down the road, another severance could be obtained off of the remnant or retained parcel. but I'm not of the understanding that the landowner is wishing to do so. We did discuss at pre-consultation the idea of doing 2 severances at once, but it was felt that for what was the development project, that as the landowner wanted to proceed, would not allow for a lot configurations that he was in favor of. So we're just going with the 1 severance. Where the neighbor also has a concern over the odd shape of the lot. The severed lot is an L-shaped configuration. The reason for that is that there's a tree line and a fence line along the remnant parcel that the landowner wished to maintain. So that's why the lot configuration is the way that it is. And from a township and county perspective, we had really no objection. We do try to promote, of course, regular lot shapes, but given the size of these lots and the building envelopes available, there's really no concern to with the L configuration there. Also asked, Mr. Salerno also asked about potential back lots being created. We don't permit that. We don't permit severances off of like private laneways or things like that. If one were to be created, going to the interior of this large parcel, like for example, if the back L portion of the lot was to be severed, we could not support that because it would not have public road frontage. Another question is, will there be engineered drainage study? No, there will not be an engineered drainage study. The Otonabee Region Conservation Authority is the agency responsible for reviewing stormwater management as well as other like environmental issues in Selwyn Township, and they've provided comments of no concern regarding this development proposal. And I think that Mr. Salerno is here. I think I've covered off most of his points that he's addressed. If there's something outstanding, I'm sure he'll get to those, but I'll finish off my presentation here and generally say that we likewise, as Orca has had no comments of no concern. We also had similar comments of no concern from Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board, Enbridge Gas, as well as Peterborough Public Health. Curve Lake First Nation is just highlighting comments that that an archaeological assessment should be required prior to any construction activity on the severed parcel. We agreed to that point in that there is a stream within 300 meters of the severed parcel. So in that regard, we don't have an archaeological assessment yet. We're putting a holding zone provision on the proposed rural residential exception zone for the severed parcel that, the holding zone is provisional on, the removal of it is provisional on obtaining an archaeological assessment. I believe that's it for my presentation. So unless there's some following questions after Keziah or Melanie's presentation, I'll end my presentation there.
Okay, thank you very much, Per. And so Keziah or Melanie, did you want to add anything to the comments that we just made? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
It's a little bit better, yeah.
Okay.
No, we've lost it again. I'm not sure why. Try leaning into the computer a little bit. It sounds like you're a little ways from it. So try it again.
Volume is high. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm county planner. I'm here to talk.
No, it's not working. I don't know what's wrong. You keep breaking up. Keziah, are you able to present?
Possibly.
Yeah, you're coming through loud and clear. I don't know why there's a difference between the two.
Yeah, so maybe just through you, Mr. Mayor, just by way of introduction, this is Melanie Menon. She's a planner with the County of Peterborough. She started with us last fall, I believe, or late last summer. So this is her first public meeting working for the county. So I'm just accompanying her. Admittedly, I am winging it a little bit because Melanie was supposed to present, but Per did give a pretty thorough overview of the application. The purpose of the official plan amendment is to change the designation from rural to lakeshore residential, which in turn would facilitate a severance application. And I just would point out that the applicant is still required to submit that application and go through that public process as well. So that will be coming out shortly. The comments received from all the public agencies have not identified any concerns. There have been a few areas of concern submitted from members of the public, which Per has addressed. And then the process from here on out, once we receive a resolution from your council, whether you support the official plan amendment, once we receive that, the county planning staff will be preparing a report to county council and making a recommendation there. Once a decision is made, the decision of county council, a notice of decision will be circulated, and then the decision will be final at the end of the 20-day appeal period if there are no appeals to the application. So I would just reiterate that if there's anybody here that wishes to receive that notice of decision for the official plan amendment, but then make a request in writing to the county to be added to the notification list for that.
Okay. I assume you got it all?
I hope so. Maybe Melanie could give me a thumbs up.
That was it.
Okay, good. And Jim, did you want to add anything?
Well, I'm not going to compete with, because I am Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, so now we'll go to anybody on the line, Madam Clerk, who wants to speak in favor of this application. Looks like
Hello.
Kent from Ecoview. Kent, go ahead.
Yes. Hello, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure you can hear me since the luck we've been having tonight with, all loud and clear. Thanks.
Well, you've come up lucky because yours is working for whatever reason.
I put on a special microphone too, so I can, because my baby's trying to nap. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as you pointed out, it is Kent Randall from Ecoview. We're the agents for the applicant and landowner, Chris Price, who is also with me tonight. I don't have too much more to add. Per gave a great synopsis as to what's going on, and I do want to thank Per and Melanie and staff for their help on this. But just to add a couple things to what Per had noted. So it is being redesignated to that lakeshore residential designation, but it's important to point out that it's a special policy that is only going to permit the one severance. So the question about the multiple severances, I guess there was a question from one of the members of the public in terms of future development. What's before you tonight is to permit just this one severance, and the designation will specifically permit that. Just to give some background or a context in terms of what this this property, because I'm sure you've seen it in your agenda packages, but for those who don't know, the property, both the severed and retained, the parcel is a remnant parcel. It's a remnant agricultural parcel. It doesn't serve any purpose from an agricultural standpoint. It's surrounded by the Windward Sands plan of subdivision. So it makes perfect sense to have this sort of integrated into the subdivision, have an additional lot, just based on the road frontage and the existing development that's there now. There isn't much of an opportunity to go beyond just the one lot. So we're trying to just provide as much space as possible with just the one severed lot. So from our perspective, it makes perfect sense to redesignate, to allow this to occur where it's occurring. Given that you do have that rural policy that restricts the retained parcels to 20 hectares. So I just wanted to make that known. And we have also seen the comments from the public. I think Per responded to those quite well. The only thing I would add is in terms of runoff, yes, Orca has noted that they're satisfied in terms of stormwater runoff, I should say. Orca has noted that they are satisfied. These are large lots. We're proposing a single detached dwelling. There is an existing single detached dwelling on the retained. You would have a single detached dwelling on the severed. So we're dealing with a lot of space, a lot of land. So it isn't really necessary to go into that sort of detail or analysis from a stormwater perspective. So aside from that, I think that those questions have been answered from the public, and although I would be happy to answer any further questions that the council or members of the public may have. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Price, did you want to add anything?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I am now going to turn it over to anybody that has either any questions or any concerns. And I think, Mr. Salerno, you are on the line. So,
okay. Good evening. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
I don't know if everybody can see me, but hopefully they can.
I can't see you. It doesn't look like your camera's turned on.
Yeah, we had it. Okay. Well, we had it turned on. That's okay.
Go ahead. We can hear you fine. So
that's great. Thank you very much. I just want to start out with thanks very much for letting us speak on this. We support the building planning goals by Selwyn Township. I wanted to start out with our background. I was a retired firefighter. My wife of a 30-year government job. We're retired now. I found the whole process very complex and confusing with what we were doing. So for us, it was kind of a little bit overwhelming. So I started looking into things and trying to research things and terminology. So anyways, I got into, at one point I had sent a second letter. My first original letter was the letter of concern, the one that Per's speaking of. I sent a secondary to his personal address, and then he informed me that it was being added to the public record, which wasn't my intention, but I apologized publicly to Per because I didn't want to put him in that position, I guess. And I felt bad afterwards thinking I didn't realize that's how the process worked. Anyways, moving forward, when I looked at area influence under the Selwyn Township, I was wondering about our township. We're in Windward Sands, which is a beautiful community. And what it is that we have a committee. So the committee, they look after 3 parks, a boat launch area. So it affects those people. And I wasn't really sure if they should have been part of area influence or not, things like that. So as I was reading through, I'm starting to kind of understand the different things. And I was a little bit, I love the community. We're very pleased with we're here. It's just that, other neighbors were asking me, why didn't I get a letter? And I'm kind of looking going, I don't know. So I guess I'm not familiar with it. So it was just things like that. Also with the application process, the original letter we received in the mail was very basic and standard, straightforward, with just the shape of the lot being cut into an L. And then secondary, I started to look into it, and I got the email that showed the attachment of the proposed building and the size and the shape of the lot. And I'm kind of looking at it thinking it just didn't make total sense. It's a proposed building, but it's very close to we're the neighbor of influence right beside them. So it's our backyard that they're looking into. So it was built, a fairly large building, 17 meters off the fence line with 207 meters of property. We found that a little bit surprising. I know it's a proposal, but I think if they would have came forward, and I'll get to that later, but it was just kind of a little bit shocking and surprising. And there's the septic and all the other things. Anyway, so it was just a little bit confusing to us. Being a retired firefighter, I know with a lot of the comments seem a little overwhelming, but for me, I see things differently in life than most people due to the things that I've seen and the environments that I've seen. So I don't know if anybody's had an opportunity from the committee, which I hope they have, to drive by the area and take a look at it. I think from my viewpoint or vision, there's a lot of things that leave potentials and risk assessments. And so those are things that I used to work with. And so that's why I was kind of standing back going, oh no. So that was my concern. So it might seem a little overwhelming with the number of questions, but that's just, I try and protect more than just my family, but the surrounding environment, the neighborhood, public safety, all the municipality. So, and moving forward in that, there were just kind of crazy things with the lot, and it was just if they want to build a bigger area with multiple dwellings, I'm more at it. I'm okay with it. It's just I wanted to see something proper that supports the township, so that it's something that works, so that the municipalities can access the services. All things that go along with snowplow, garbage removal, fire services, EMS, all the things. Moving forward to that building proposal, I spoke to Chris, and it didn't come until the last hour, which was unfortunate. So last evening he showed up at my door at about 8 o'clock, and I was really pleased that it happened. But it had to, and when I read through your procedures, it suggests that you should talk to the neighbors. And I guess I was just hoping that conversation would have came sooner than later. So for it being the last hour, it was a little bit tough, but we did have a good conversation. Chris is a wonderful neighbor. We really like him, like his family. They're great people. We support with a lot of things that they're saying with the subdivision, building a new lot. That's great for them. I think the big concern for us is when we look at it, we look at some of the things about the property being so close to our house, into our backyard, looking into our backyard, and some of the other concerns, the driveway. I spoke to Chris about it. He apologized profusely, said that he'd try and correct it, but there's just some problems with emergency egress and access to my property currently. And as the pictures that have come up in the presentation that I've submitted, I don't know if you've seen them. Anybody have seen them? Has anybody seen the pictures?
They've been circulated, yeah.
Okay, so you've seen the pictures of the driveway, and it's an interim issue, but it's consistent. And so as development of property, there's more and more things with the new environment, with Purelator and things like that. There's a concern for driveway access. Chris has assured me that he'll correct that. So when we had a conversation, he's hoping to correct those issues. That's great. To do with the odd shaped lot, the L-shaped lot. And when I spoke to Chris, he suggested that they would like to put a garden in the back corner, and that's the purpose of why they wanted to retain that L shape. And it's just, as a person, I'm looking at the lot shape, and if you look at the farm loop that comes into the back edge of the property, you would think that would be, because you can't build on it, that would be an ideal place for a garden. But it's his property, so he can do whatever he wants. I submitted a picture with a division of the property being equal shape to be common with the environment that's in Windward Sands. It's two rectangles, and so I just thought that, I don't know, has everybody seen that picture? Wonderful, thank you. Other than that, I think.
They can build further.
Oh, if they can build further back. So we're hoping that they can build further back from the building, so that we can have some sort of a buffer zone. We're hoping that we could have some sort of a, hopefully Chris, when I spoke to Chris last night, he was in agreement that with some of my concerns that he would agree with them. I'm hoping that he still feels that way as to, we were going to write something up, but we were talking about it, and I thought it's probably best if we have it on record. So some of them were a setback with no future development, no future severances, and can that be attached to the property versus the person? Because my concern was not just Chris living there. If the next person that moves in, this is a forever change. And so let's say for some reason they move and the next person comes in, has deep pockets, and next thing they start piecing off. Can that happen? I don't know. Go ahead.
Dominic, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up and then we'll answer all your questions at once.
Absolutely.
So if they can just move, you have no problem, but.
Yeah, we have no problem if they can move it back, but I'd appreciate if people came by and took a look at the property to really get a good look at the environment, to really understand what we're talking about here tonight. It is a big, large property. So I don't know, I would hope everybody would take a look, and I'd really appreciate that. So thanks very much for your time, everyone, and have a great night. Thank you for sitting while COVID's on and all the crazy stuff.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dominic, and for being here. I'm just gonna run through a couple of those points that you made, and I'm gonna
Sure.
ask planners to just help me for a second. So if I understand correctly, and Pierre can tell me, I think it's 120 meters is the area that anybody within 120 meters of the proposal need to be advised. So it's a very established method. Am I remember? It's the 100. It because I is nodding. So it's 120 meters. So that's how that piece works. In terms of the and again, the planners correct me if I'm wrong. The rules attach when it comes to planning to the property, not to the owner of the property. So Keziah is nodding, just to make that clear. In the planning world, it's the property that the zoning and the official plan applies to. And so regardless of whether it changes hands on ownership, the rules continue to apply to the property. In terms of setbacks, our bylaw, and correct me if I'm wrong, will have under that zoning side and front and rear setback requirements for the placement of a building. Am I correct on that, Per?
That's right.
Right.
The rural residential zone has set requirements for setbacks from lot lines and front yards and rear yards. So even as proposed, the 17 meters of sort of the concept location of the dwelling, as per the planning report submitted by Ecoview, would meet our side yard setback and our front yard setback requirement.
Okay. The other thing is any new entrance would have to have an entrance permit issued where there will be an examination of that. So Per, I'm correct that new entrance would be subject to an entrance permit, correct?
Yeah, in response to that, absolutely. So the new entrance on the retained parcel will require an entrance a permit. And I neglected to just mention, we did have a comment in regard to that entrance from Rick in our Public Works Department, that pending a site visit to determine if there was any risk of runoff from that property being a little bit higher elevation than the property opposite across the road, that he didn't want those the driveways from those two properties opposite each other facing each other, so that the one end would be receiving a lot of runoff. So potentially that driveway may be required to relocate a little bit north or a little bit south, just so that the two driveways aren't completely opposite to each other.
And that's the kind of thing that we look for. And the final thing before I turn it over to my fellow council members, I just want to compliment you, Dominic and Chris. The instructions or the suggestions that neighbors talk to each other in situations like this, I think is a good one. And the fact, I take your point about the timing, but the fact that you've had those conversations, I think speaks well of both of you. And so thank you for doing that. I just want to ask any of my colleagues if they had any comments that they wanted to make. Donna, go ahead.
Yes, through you. Thank you very much. I have looked at the property and it is in Pear's report, or the county's report, I'm not sure which one, about the MDS ARC, because there is an active barn backing up onto the fence line of this property. So I was just wondering with our experts, how far down that MDS ARC goes into the subject property that's going to be rezoned.
So through you, excuse me, through you, Mr. Mayor, the answer to that is we had some discussion over that. The planning justification report noted a type A, what's called a type A land use for the subject property. We had some input from the Ontario Minister of Agriculture, and based on the number of lots in this area, they recommended to us that the right type of land use in this area was to be considered a type B, which is the higher density residential. What that does to the MDS ARC is it doubles the size of it. However, in the counties and the township's review of that, even doubling the ARC size calculation that was provided by EcoView, there is still a sufficient setback and development area outside of the MDS ARC for the proposed severed and retained parcels. So it's not a concern. However, by doubling the ARC size, it pushes the potential development area on the severed parcel closer to Mr. Salerno's property. So the latitude to move it closer to the farm parcel to the east is sort of limited to about maybe halfway through the property, the new severed parcel. There's probably a little bit of latitude to move it a little bit eastward from what's in the concept plan, but we'd need to sort of review that.
Thank you for that response. And to EcoView and the planners, I think, and the owner, of course, if you could take that into consideration, moving it a little closer to the boundary of the MDS ARC, and so it's not quite so close to the Salerno property, I think would be greatly appreciated, but that would be up to all the people involved.
Thank you, Donna. Kent, do you want to comment on that? I think
yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, and through to Councillor Ballantyne, and I would say that it is the intention of Mr. Price to set that house back as far as possible from the road. So it's certainly in his interest and our interest to move it as far from that property as possible, the adjacent property.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kent. Other colleagues from council want to make any comments? I don't see any. So, Per, what is it exactly you want us to do right
now? So the recommendation tonight, what the zoning bylaw is doing is we're recommending approval of the zoning amendment that's before council tonight. The in effect date is contingent on the official plan amendment, of course, right, being passed at a later date. And we're also recommending tonight that you support the official plan amendment.
Okay, so just so that I can get this, so we're looking at passing a zoning bylaw to take effect at some point in the future.
Yeah,
we're looking at the county still would have to do the official plan amendment, which we would be supporting. And then in addition, there would also be the public process of land division that would have to take place as well, because there still would need to be the process for the actual division of the lot, correct?
That's right.
But we're not dealing with that today. The first two things are necessary for the third thing to happen.
That's correct.
Okay, colleagues, does somebody want to make that motion? Anita? You're muted, Anita.
Sorry. Yeah, so that recommendation that's part of the report also talked about the bylaw. So is there any additions to the recommendation that is in the report? I think you had mentioned one thing that didn't seem to be in there.
Per?
Sorry, I missed that. I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Are you referring to the holding zone provision for the archaeological assessment?
No, it's just in the recommendation at the beginning of the report. It talks about the zoning bylaw amendment, and then also advising the county of Peterborough that supports the OPA, and then bylaw 2022-030, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought maybe our Mr. Mayor had also added another point to what is recommended here in this report.
Well, I'm causing confusion unnecessarily. The point I was trying to make, and I obviously didn't do it very well, is that after the things in this resolution are done, there is still a land division process, which we're not involved in, that has to happen at the county level.
Okay,
That's
well, I'll move the recommendation then.
Thank you. Somebody want to second it? Jerry, any further conversation? All in favor? Carried. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you. It's 6:15. We're going to take a 5-minute break
Thank
and
you.
then we'll pick up with the rest of the agenda. So 5 minutes. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Keziah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salerno. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay. Bye. So 5 minutes, colleagues. Okay, colleagues, we're all back, so we will begin. And, oops, sorry, yeah, we've got recording back on, thank you. So we're all set. Tanya now?
We're good to go, council.
Thank you. Okay, the next is question period. Was there any questions submitted, Madam Clerk?
No questions.
Okay, then we'll get on to municipal officers and staff reports. So first one is from our Chief Administrative Officer, and this is our review of the work plans. So we'll do this in our normal way. I'll call out the particular plan, and then if anybody has any comments on those, I will recognize them. So we will start with the CAO. Is there any questions or comments on any of the items on the CAO report? I don't. Yes, Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just with regards to the Lakeville Campground. I think that question was answered at our last council meeting, but just to confirm the date of when we may be receiving the report with regards to Orca.
We expect to have that for you at the next meeting.
Good, 2 weeks from tonight. Any other questions? Not seeing any. I had one myself. The options on the water and wastewater service contract, is that there's a note here that will come to council. Is that going to come sometime in the near term, or is that much further out?
It's a little ways out yet. We are awaiting the results of the city's review with regard to how they're going to manage their wastewater and water services moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing anything else on that. We'll move to building and planning department. I see Anita's hand up again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is with regards to the first quarter building department stats, which is a separate sheet. Looks like our revenues, our development fees, our revenues, and construction value are up like huge, 200%, 218%, 326% in value. Were there some particularly large projects that are generating that kind of statistic?
Robert?
I know that we did issue our apartment building for the Lilac subdivision. And I don't know if those would have been recorded on that because of the issuance of the permits. I could look into that further, Anita, but I don't know sort of the history before I came on board.
Anita? Yeah.
Yeah, I just find it really amazing, really good news, because 2022 year to date construction value is over $13.5 million. So that's really huge dollars, and I just it's exciting, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yep, it is. There's a lot of activity taking place, and I'm going to suspect the Lilacs is showing up in there. But Robert can get back on that. Other questions on building and planning. I was going to ask the cloud permit application tracking on our planning. Where do we stand on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have set up some training sessions that are commencing next week with regard to the implementation of applications for consents and minor variances. The project got a little bit delayed when the person we had lined up to onboard for March 1st is in the junior planner role, backed out of the position. Now that we've refilled the development approvals technician role, we've got that back on track, and we're commencing it with that rollout this month.
Great, thank you. And the other question again on timeline, you've got the Lakefield South development. I'm just wondering, do you have any idea when council will become engaged with that application in terms of how that's proceeding?
With regard to that question, Mr. Mayor, I will have to get back to you. Sort of that application's a little bit with the county is it's in a plan of subdivision stage.
Yeah, that's fine. Just whenever you get a chance. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, we're now on Community and Corporate Services Clerk's Department. Donna and then Sherry.
Yes, through you to Angie. Megan's name is beside it, but it's the council communicator. I seem to recall, and I could be wrong, that we didn't do a council communicator in election year.
We have done the council communicator in an election year. We don't do the town hall meetings in an election year.
Okay.
Okay.
And then there was one more under Megan, a couple below, and it says Spotlight of Council, social media initiative to highlight council and committee actions after council update. I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, so what Megan does prior to a council meeting, she looks at the agenda and develops some social media posts to let people know what's coming up on the agenda. And then following the meeting, she will report out some key council decisions. So she does that for every meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, Sherry.
Thank you, Julie. On page 4 for the capital project support, the stamped concrete replacement in downtown Lakefield, the grant that was submitted, we were unsuccessful. Will someone still be looking after the weeds that are coming up right now in the sidewalks along the main street, because they are really unsightly?
Yeah, so for sure, our Parks and Rec staff, a couple of times a year, will kind of take the whippersnapper and give it a bit of a shave down. So we'll continue to maintain it, and we'll continue to look for any grants or other funds to try to get that project underway.
Right, thank you.
Nita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This sort of piggybacks on what Sherry was talking about with regards to the 2 grants that were submitted that were unsuccessful. What was the dollar value on the Main Street Community Activator Program, and what was the ask, I guess, for the community kiosk project?
I'll have to just have a quick look at the budget document. If you could give me a moment, or we could come back to that if you want me to look that up.
Yeah, and the one reason that I asked with regards to the kiosk project, I seem to recall the Village Lions, I think it was the Village Lions some time ago, had suggested that they might be interested in, I guess, contributing to a kiosk project at Cenotaph Park, but I just can't remember all the details now.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely circle back. It's always great if we can work with a community partner. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the capital worksheets, pardon me.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, we'll continue on. Is there any other questions for Angie? No. Okay. So let's move on to financial services. Does anybody have any questions for Lane? Donna?
Yes, through you to Lane. This is Mike and Michelle's portion, and it's the coordination and implementation of the new phone system. I just wondered how different, or if maybe you don't even really know yet, it has the whole year to accomplish it. How different will the phone system be from it is now?
Lane?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. The main issue that we'll be implementing first is the Microsoft Office Windows 365. And once that comes into play and we get that fully implemented, then we'll move on to the phone system. And the phone system itself will be more internet-based as opposed to cell lines and things like that.
So, but there still will be the availability for people to call in. not total internet?
People won't even notice the difference, whether they're talking through their MS Teams accounts or through the Bell lines. We will maintain some Bell lines for our emergency preparedness, but there'll be no change for the individuals, for the ratepayers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Lane?
Mr. Mayor, I did find that information if you wanted, I could give a quick update. Sorry, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yep, so the community kiosks, so these were kiosks, not just in Lakeville, but in all of our hamlets, was about $58,000 in value. And the interlock brickwork was valued at about $137,000.
Okay, thank you. Fire department. Questions on the fire department? So the only question, oh, go ahead, Donna.
Sorry, I didn't have this marked right. For you to Gord, the firehouse software transition / phase out, review implications of current transition and or potential phase out of firehouse software, identify and assess other potential options. I didn't even think you were finished totally implementing the firehouse software. And so now are they suggesting that you do something else to track?
Evening all, through you, Mayor Mitchell, Donna. So firehouse we've used for a number of years, same as a lot of departments all through North America. So what's happened is it's been sold to a company that's, wanting to change things, and that company, we've looked at their software and we're not real happy with it. And at the same time, there's another company that we are looking at to a great possibility to change to, and they've been bought out by this same company, the CSO company out of the States. So they're in the transition of putting everything together to, they really changed. So there are a couple of departments in the state or in the Southern Ontario that went with the CSO company, and they are not happy with the system. And it's even harder to work with. So we have till supposedly now the end of this year or 2023, possibly. We're hoping that that's the case, and then we'll look at it. So, but right now there's not a whole lot of options for this kind of a software package. There is one in Canada, but it's kind of mediocre to what we've been using to get facts and figures back out. So we're in that process.
That's too bad. You're having a lot of changes.
Oh, always. What fun would it be, no changes?
Jerry, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. Anybody else in the fire department? Gord, I had a question. How are we doing on our roster of firefighters? Are we in good shape?
Yeah, we are in good shape. So actually, with COVID, it's taken that much longer to get some of them installed and get the initial training done. But holy moly! So now that the initial ones that were pre-trained, we're getting calls to Ennismore. We're not getting 3 or 4. We're getting all of them showing up. So nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. So they were all really getting really anxious to get going, and then even our new ones that are going to Norwood are starting to go to calls too. So yeah, well, it's been a long process, and with COVID, it's probably slowing down again. So it's been good, Mayor. So
thank you. I don't think I see anything else for the fire department, so we'll move on to human resources. And did anybody want to have any comments on that? The only observation I would make is on the first part of that, when I look at recruitment and I look at all the bullets there. So it's been a significant challenge in terms of all of the hiring that we've had to do over the last 12 months. So anyways, I just thought I'd make note of that. Work on it. Okay, library. Any questions on the library? Anita?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have three questions, well, two questions and a comment. What's the anticipated opening of the makerspace, for one? What does overdrive stand for on the library activity? And I wanted to also comment with regards to the activities, especially during the March break, the take and make bags and all those. I haven't participated in any, but I've kind of followed it on Facebook, and it sounds like, especially the number of participants, I guess, for instance, of take and make bags, 200, etc. So I think that has been a really successful program, and so congratulations to staff for making that happen. But then again, like I said, so my question is with regard to what does overdrive stand for and the estimated opening of makerspace?
Okay, Sarah.
Thank you for your kind comments. Overdrive on our circulation stats stand, that was our previous ebook platform. So it's just kind of highlighting the fact that we have switched providers and just the difference in those numbers. Since that change, the anticipated opening date of the makerspace, we're aiming for the fall. I'd say we have about 95% of the funding spent at this point. Most of the equipment, the furniture, we've now decided on one of our quotes. So throughout the summer, we'll just be kind of determining what the operating hours look like, developing our user guides and manuals, and figuring out how the equipment works ourselves. So we're hoping for the fall, and we're hoping to have an open house around that time as well.
Good. Any other questions on the library? Okay, we'll move on to Parks and Rec. Any questions from Parks and Rec? Sherry? No? Oh, sorry. Anybody else in Parks and Rec? I had a question for Mike. The Trail Town launch initiative, this is a little bit about to what Sherry was talking about previously. So we do have that red grant, and we are completing the streetscape improvements, right?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely we are.
Any kind of timeline and when we could expect that to be completed?
The work for the installs and whatnot should be done early May, mid-May at the latest, but I have no idea when they're doing an event to do a launch. There's a lot of coordinating to do, and there's been talk of having one that was partnered, and this is going way back pre-COVID, with Buckhorn, and then it was going to be by ourselves. So I really don't know what that's going to look like. We're going to get everything installed and make sure everything's ready to go early this spring, and then we will see and let council know exactly when there will be an official grand opening.
Okay, great. And as of now, and I realize things changing sometimes almost hourly, but in terms of the events, the Jazz Festival and the Shamrock Festival are still planned to go ahead this July. Am I correct in that?
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, the Jazz Fest is July the 9th, Saturday, July the 9th. Shamrock Festival is Sunday. It's a one-day event only because the tractor and truck pull is taking a year off. And it's Sunday, July the 10th. And I hear that there's homecoming still, but I don't know when in August that they've confirmed. So I was actually supposed to meet with Arlene Jessup at the arena tonight about the use of that for an event, and obviously couldn't attend.
Okay, Anita?
Just to follow up with Mike, the Lakefield Homecoming is scheduled for Friday, the August 5th to Sunday, August 7th. And a number of events are being planned and just being finalized. So it sounds like it's going to be a good weekend.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, let's move on to Public Works. Any questions on the Public Works? Sherry?
Thank you to you. Is Rick on the line?
No, he's not, Sherry. So we'll try to help you. If we can't help you, we'll get an answer and get back to you.
Okay, so this is a question for public edification on Concession Street. Some members of council might not be aware that the old building that was encroaching is gone at Cottage Toys. And so that's going to allow the sidewalk to continue to Queen Street. And I just wanted clarification as to what the timeline is of finishing that sidewalk.
I don't have that information, Sherry. We can get back to you with it though, unless I see Angie unmuted herself. Maybe she has information that I don't have.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think Rick is hopeful it will be late summer that they could get started with that, because we're going to do it with our own forces.
Okay. Thank you.
Anita?
Just to follow up on Sherry's question, is the cost of the sidewalk in this year's budget, or will we find the money somewhere?
Wayne? Or whoever?
Yeah, it was included in the budget.
Okay. Okay, good. Any other questions on any of those? No? Okay. Any questions on the report card? No, I don't see any. Oh, Anita?
I just wanted to say congratulations. It's got a lot of great information in it. So whoever put it together, good job.
Great.
I'll let Megan know.
And the last item on that section is the customer service results. Anybody have any questions on those? No. Okay. I'll entertain. Oh, Sherry, you want to move? Or do you have a question? She's moving. A second. Anita, all those in favor? Carry. Okay. That takes us on to the first quarter financial report from Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As this is the first quarter financial review, we're still really early days in our fiscal year 2022. I have included some comments that support the current status of the statements, and I noted a few issues, but I can confirm that from my perspective at this point, there are no real concerns at this juncture. And I would just welcome any questions that council may have on the first quarter statement.
Any questions, colleagues? I had a question, Lane, and I'm sure there's a simple explanation for this, but in going through the various cost centers, for whatever reason, when you look at the salaries and benefits line, there doesn't seem to be much consistency. So in general government, we're at 29%. In economic development, we're at 20%. Fire, we're at 23%. Protective inspection, we're at 30%. Roadways, we're at 24%. Waste, we're at 21%. Parks and Rec, we're at 20%. I'm just curious as to, there are some where there's a reason why, but generally we should be at about 24 or 25%. So I'm just curious as to why it's so different from department to department.
Yeah, so I guess a couple of possible reasons there. First of all, I would say anything to do with public works, landfill, parks and rec. Some of those are definitely affected seasonally. So it wouldn't just be a standard 25%. With respect to some of those other departments, general government, I would agree, maybe economic development, some of those. You had commented earlier in the meeting about our recruitments. So definitely we would have some positions that we have filled and some positions that we've not filled. And I think that would be another key reason for that.
Okay, that's good. So generally, your observation is that we're on track with our budget, correct?
That is correct.
Good. Okay, we need a motion to receive that report. Anita, seconded by Donna. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, so then we're on to the next report, which is the water and sewer budget at, Lane, are you going to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to report on the water and sewer budget for 2022. This is the last budget that we'll be bringing forward to council for this year. Thanks to Adam, of course, for his background work and supporting documentation. Hopefully it was informative to council. It's definitely going to be another busy year for capital investments as outlined in those attachments. Of course, the budget also includes the new Peterborough Utilities Group operating agreement and those increased operating amounts that we have there. So because of that, staff are proposing a 1% rate increase effective with the July 2022 billing cycle. This would be the first increase that council is being asked to implement since 2019 when we set the 2020 rates. Of course, since that time, the Peterborough operating agreement has increased in around $45,000. And so this would allow us to stay current with that operating agreement. The majority of the impact would be on our residential ratepayers, and the impact there is approximately $1.20 per month for the typical Lakefield homeowner. There's definitely a lot of data there, but so maybe at this point I'll just welcome any questions that council may have on the report.
Thank you, Lane. Questions, colleagues? I don't see any, so we need a motion to approve that budget. Sherry is moving it and Anita is seconding it. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, colleagues, we're going to go on to the final staff report. This is on the short-term rentals. I've had a number of colleagues talk to me separately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Robert to do the report. Then I'm going to ask all of the colleagues if they want to make some comments. I will then, when that exercise is finished, seek if there is a motion to be had coming out of that conversation. So I'm going to ask Robert to go first and just go through his report, and then I'm going to ask each of the councillors to make the comments, and then I'll go to seek a motion. So, Robert, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report I'm presenting today is on short-term rental industry enforcement. And the recommendation is that it's received for information. The background of this report is to ensure that we have effective enforcement and response to nuisance short-term rentals. One of the key things that we're looking to do is enhance the amount of communication we have with relation to complaints of our nuisance bylaws. We're working with the police services, fire, public health, and third-party enforcement service to facilitate timely reaction to these complaints to ensure that we can move forward with our current resolution system. Included in the report for your information is a response from the CAO's county report, where each of the lower tiers in the county sort of described their approach to dealing with short-term rentals. I've spoken with all of the local lower tier representatives, and it has been expressed to me by my peers at those municipalities that for the majority of the lower tiers, they're not experiencing much of a problem with short-term rentals currently. Of exception, though, was North Kawartha, Trent Lakes, and Duro Dummer, who are actively either collecting information or researching the possibility of licensing programs. For us, we've opted to implement the administrative penalty system, which we're utilizing currently. It involves having inspection fees applied to the owners of property upon the second inspection, where an infraction of one of our nuisance bylaws is registered, utilizing police reporting, our third-party enforcement partner, and complaints that our bylaw enforcement officers able to verify. There was some questions raised about if that fee was appropriate or if it was needed to be increased based on the research that I was able to conduct and talking to our comparative municipalities. I was able to determine that generally only the city of Kawartha Lakes in our local area is utilizing that system currently, and our fee structure is currently significantly higher than theirs. And we've got to be mindful that the administrative penalties don't become punitive in nature, and that they are generally just used to promote compliance with the bylaws that we have in place. We have had some time with this system in place, and I would encourage us to stay the course based on the fact that we now have a full-time bylaw enforcement officer, which we didn't have the benefit for the entire last season. In particular, I suspect the activity in general may increase this year with the results of kind of COVID controls loosening up a little. I think, though, that with the increased utilization potentially of our third-party contractor, the ability of us having a bylaw enforcement officer to follow up on complaints and increased communication commitments that I've received from the Police Services Board, from the OPP in particular, as well as Peterborough County Health, Peterborough Humane Society, that we can have an effective result on the level of complaints that are generated from problem short-term rentals. So I'd be more than happy to take any questions from council if there is any.
Okay, Robert, thank you very much for doing the report. I see Sherry has her hand up first. Just make a note, because I'll have some specific comments, that this council has dealt with this issue right from the beginning. In fact, I believe Sherry and Jerry sat on an ad hoc committee with some members of the public to begin this process, and it's something that we've been engaged on for some time, and dare I say, well in advance of some of our neighbors. So Sherry, go ahead.
Thank you. I can't imagine living next to a property which is the short-term rental gone wrong. It must be a living HE double hockey sticks. As properties get snapped up, when they go up for sale and people want a quick turnaround on their investment, this problem will only mushroom. We need to do what we can to discourage landlords renting to the disruptors. There are steps we can take short of licensing, which is one of the things being contemplated by municipalities that are nearby us. And I'm not sure whether Robert, Janice, or Angie can speak to the downside of issuing licenses to these properties.
Best if I unmute myself. So we have a question from Sherry to Janice, or to whoever wants to take it. The downside to licensing.
Sure, and I think Robert or Ange can pipe in here as well. But really, a licensing regime is very resource intensive. So there are quite a number of short-term rentals that we know operate in the township. Some on a occasional basis, so the property owner who just wants to rent a couple times a year to help cover their property taxes, and some certainly that are on a more frequent or almost continuous basis. But if you have a licensing program, you are dealing with all of those properties. So it is very resource intensive, and we really wouldn't have the resources in place at this point to be able to manage that type of program. I guess even if you go down the licensing road, you still are going to have the complaints. It's not going to get rid of your complaints. You're still going to have those issues, and you're still going to need to deal with them. So that the resources that we would be investing into a licensing program could probably be better utilized to try and proceed with the program we have in place now and work through those complaints we do get on the few properties. We get lots of complaints, but it's typically on just a handful of properties. So focusing our efforts on those handful of properties that generate all of those complaints would be more effective use of our resources.
Thank you. Additional comments, colleagues? Donna.
Yes, through you. I do have a motion that I would like to put on the table for discussion, but I'm not sure if you think it would be appropriate for me to wait till the end when everybody gives their comments, or to do my motion now.
Perhaps we could let everybody have one round of their comments, and then I will return to you first.
Okay.
For your motion.
Thank you.
Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what we've seen the last 2 years are people who have been basically housebound due to the COVID restrictions. And as Sherry pointed out, this coming season could really, blow things right out of the water. And I think that we do have to be even more vigilant, perhaps this year, especially as a result of, like I said, people are kind of being let out of their caves. And as Sherry also pointed out, with regards to, outside investors coming and buying places just so they can rent them out. So it's going to be a challenge. And I think it's something that we need to tread carefully going forward, especially for this current season and possibly any future seasons. We have to do it right. I do appreciate the fact that Angie did send us an email with some information. But I think, like I said, we don't know what the coming season is going to be looking like, and we do have to really look at this carefully.
Thank you, Anita. Okay, Jerry.
Thank you. My apologies if this saying it just shut off. My overhead heater just went off. I got it turned down in time. Short-term rentals, they're a pain in the behind. Some of them. For others, as we've discussed, that affordable cottage ownership. Sherry mentioned about licensing. It can be done if we were to choose. I know I've got a property out of province. I'm registered. I'm licensed. They make you go through a rigmarole out there, making sure you've got a landline for your phone, a phone there. That way, 911, a rubber bath mat for your bathtub and shower, bed bug retardant mattress covers, things like that to promote health and safety. So the province of 125,000 people can license these things and then cross-reference, surely to God, between Airbnb and VRBO, I believe there's 15 right now on their websites. We could probably handle the licensing. On the flip side, do we want to create that kind of workload, and do we want to punish those who, are playing by the rules and they're not causing any issues? As far as the percent goes, it's a very small percent that we do have the issues with. I think the most important thing is the communication so we can get the fines going. If we're repeat offenders, we need to make sure that we're getting those fines. We've got 5 people sitting here on council. We've got an entire staff that has a management meeting every week or every 2 weeks that they bounce ideas off of. We've got an entire county and numerous municipalities beside us, and no one's come up with a solution. Nobody has come up with that solution. Province-wide, everybody's struggling with it. I've said it once, I'm going to say it again. The only way to get somebody's attention is take some money from them. That is the only way. So I like the way we've gone with the penalties, but again, it all comes down to the communication. I think we need as a staff and the OPP need to make sure that they are communicating so we can get these penalties out there, because that's the only way it's the only way you get their attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm going to make a couple of comments of my own, and then I'll go back to Donna. So first of all, I just want to reiterate the point that I made at the beginning. Sherry spoke to it, Jerry spoke to it. I think Anita and Donna both alluded to it. As a township, we haven't ignored this problem. The fact is, we, back in 2019, when this council first came together, put together a committee, working with a range of stakeholders to try to come up with a solution. And the thought at that time, and I continue to think it's a good thought. Jerry sort of summed it up, about in the pocketbook, is to have an enforcement mechanism in place. I want to compliment staff for we've been through 4 years of doing this. I think Angie sent out a note about some of the stuff that we've done. Robert in his report has said that as well. And Robert, again, thank you for doing the report. Look, we welcome visitors to our area. That's been a part of our way of life since day one, right? But what's really important, and Sherry spoke to this a little bit, is that when you are here and you're enjoying what we have to offer or what nature is providing, it's imperative that you do it in a way that is consistent with the enjoyment of your neighbor and the person that lives next to you. You need to be responsible. And as a township, we have an obligation to those folks when people decide that they're not going to be acting in an appropriate way, that we have some tools to try to make sure that they do. I take the point, and Jerry said this, that there are lots of folks who do this and do it very responsibly. The challenge is, though, that there are a few that don't, and it has an impact, not just necessarily the person that lives immediately next to them, but somebody that's 3 or 4 places down, and there's a whole area that's being affected. And when some of these are operating, it's not just one evening that the disruption happens. It can be weekend after weekend after weekend, and so it can be concerning. So what I want to suggest is that we do, and this is in no way to suggest that we haven't done some things, but just to explore some other things. I get the advice about not getting the fees too high, but I think there's some room to increase them. I'd like us to take a look at that. We set that fee, 4 years ago? Just inflation in the last 4 years would see an adjustment of that fee 10 to 15%. And I think we could probably go a little bit more. It sends a signal that we're serious if we want to increase that fee a little bit. I don't know what the right amount is, and I don't want to get into the punishment part, but I think it's something that we can look at. The second thing, and Robert spoke to it in his report, it's really going to be important that that I guess it's called Maxima Protection is the name of the new firm, is that they do proactive observations. So over time, it becomes clear where the problems are, and so and that can be conveyed. And I would hope that we're going to have some proactive monitoring of those properties. Obviously, if something happens for the first time, it's difficult to anticipated that. But when things are happening on a regular basis, I think we want to be proactive. Another thing that Robert spoke to in his report, and I think it's really important that we follow it up and even formalize it, and that's to have a regular touch base session amongst our bylaw enforcement, our firm that we've hired, the OPP, public health, or anybody else that and it doesn't need to be a long session, but just a touch base session during the peak season. You know, what took place last week, and what did we hear? What do we need to look at next week as a potential area? And I'd like to see that sort of formalized if it's possible to do that. The promotional material, we've done a good job on that. I think we need to refresh it and continue to push that out to folks, and particularly to let the neighbors know what to do when you're faced with something like this. And I don't get me wrong, we've done a lot of that, but I think we might want to look at doing more. One of the ideas I had is, because one of the complaints that happens depending on where it is parking. That somebody comes in there and a cottage road ends up with 10 or 15 cars parked on it. I wish we could find a way to do it. I had a suggestion that, you know, if we defined it as a home-based business, we have parking regulations on a home-based business. I'm not necessarily saying that that's the way to do it, but I think we need to find a way that we can enforce some of those. And what would be nice, and Angie, I really appreciated your report that you provided. If as a council, because we get a lot of people, and rightfully so, who contact us as council members about these problems. If we could get a monthly report from May through September or October that lets us know what enforcement activity has taken place. Those are just some suggestions, and again, it's not in any way to suggest that staff and folks haven't been doing things. It's some suggestions just on where we could look at trying to enhance our activities in that regard. So those are some of my ideas. And Donna, did you want to propose a motion?
Yes. Am I unmuted? Okay. I'll be a little repetitive. I want to thank Robert and Angie for all the input that they've given us. And I do think that we're doing a pretty good job, but I just felt that the report fell a little short on the recommendations and how the recommendations were going to be followed through on. So I have written up a motion. It's fairly long, and I'll stop at one point because I talked to Andy and I've actually written out his 6 points. So I don't know if you want me to repeat those because they're more precise. What would you like me to do on those 6 points, Andy? Because it's part of the motion.
Yeah, just read your motion so that council can see it. If we were in the council chambers, we would just exchange a written thing, but that's one of the challenges. So just read the motion, and if it attracts a seconder, it does, and then we'll move from there. So
okay, so here we go. Whereas short-term rental properties are becoming more prevalent and causing undue stress for many of our ratepayers, let it be resolved that we receive the report for information from the manager of building and planning, Robert Kelly. And whereas the report is still too vague in the recommendations, let it be resolved that staff consider the 6 recommendations made by the mayor, as well as more thoroughly examine practices and industry standards from municipalities across the province and report back to council by May 10th, 2022. The 6 suggested recommendations to be considered by staff are Despite staff recommendations, look at increasing the minimum first fine up to double or current rate. We're not saying that it has to be doubled, but consider increasing it. When complaints are received by staff or council, inform Maxima Protection Inc. that they may be required to visit problematic sites during the night and on weekends, and if necessary, inform the police of activities observed. During rental season, establish a weekly call session, Monday morning, whereby representatives from Maximum Protection, police, public health, township bylaw officer, and any other relevant parties to compare observations on properties of concern and plan a remedial coordinated response. Provide the property owners with problematic issues, promotional material on the policies to be followed in our township. And if septic tank capacity infractions are suspected, the township bylaw enforcement officer notify public health and ask for an inspection. Parking bylaw guidelines noted for home-based business be applied to short-term rent properties. Comprehensive zoning bylaw 3.17.2. And the last one, staff prepare a monthly report to council outlining concerns and complaints due to short-term rentals. And I would hope that one of my colleagues would second that.
I'll get this right. Sherry is seconding it. With a comment or this second? This second. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, colleagues. And I will get this down pat about hitting this space bar so I get my voice heard. So consent items. Now, who wants to pull an item? Sherry, which item?
5A.
5A. Okay. Anybody else would like to pull one? Okay, I also had 5A, so I'm thinking we're going to ask the same question. I'd like to ask a question about 5G, and then under corresponding 66, 68, and 69. Okay. So Jerry or Anita or Donna, anything? No? Okay. Sherry, 5A.
Yes, so through you to Lane, are we still the lowest tax rate in the county? Lane?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if all the townships have actually approved their rates yet, but I would find it really difficult that anybody could get lower than us based on the last time I looked at it. I could almost say with 99% confidence it will still be the lowest rate in the county.
Okay, thank you very much. And that is all due to our staff being diligent and our council. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. And a similar question, Lane, when I look at your attachment, where you have the, here I'm gonna, that won't show up, so, but it's where you do the actual calculation. So if you look at the rural tax, property tax rate, so you have the municipal amount, the ORCA amount, the OPP amount, the county amount, and the education amount, and it comes up to an amount. And that represents 2.4. And if I do the math, the municipal portion, that's the township portion, would be 42% of that. So the actual increase, if I've done my calculations, that's attributable to the township in the rural areas would be 1.03%. Am I doing my math correctly?
I believe that's correct. I do have a sheet that I could pull up here just to double check, but I think that's the right figure.
Okay. And using the same mathematical formula for the village, it would be 0.92. Anyways, I'll let you, if that's inaccurate, then interrupt the rest of our conversation and come back on that. But to Sherry's point, and I want to add, and I believe all of council would add to this, it's through a lot of hard work and dedication from our staff that we're able to provide those services without a substantial tax increase. I had a question about 5G, and is Mike still on the line? Mike,
Yes,
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 I
he is.
am.
Oh, there you are.
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, I am.
Okay, very good. The utilization study of the Lakefield Marina, could you just, in a very small recap, just outline the type of community engagement that will take place as part of that review?
Well, if we talk about the direct meetings, we have up to 10 meetings of local committees, local groups, special interest groups, stakeholder groups. So that could include the Trail Committee. It certainly would include Parks and Rec Advisory Council, the Kawartha Chamber, those sorts of things. There is going to be a CIP or information session of some sort, and we'll plan that with council. There will be a survey that's available online, and we'll make sure we have paper copies for those that don't want to do anything online. So it's going to be pretty, it's going to cover a lot of different aspects or opportunities for people to have their input.
Oops. Will that include the users of the current facility as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, they are considered one of the user groups, seasonals, and we looked at the transients that have returned for more than 2 or 3 times in the last 10 years. We have a lot of repeat that live elsewhere but want to rent for a full month. There's one family that come, a school teacher and a gentleman who works downtown, and they come for the 2 months. The second they can, they get here with their kids, and they don't own a cottage and they live in Durham. But so they would be somebody we'd like to hear from. And that's just one example of some of the, I hate to use the term transient because they return regularly. They just can't stay for the whole season.
Right. So bottom line is there's going to be a robust community conversation about this.
Yeah, that's one thing I think we do better than any township I've been part of, or certainly I've lived in, is the outreach and the personal commitment to making sure that everyone's voice can be heard is really at the forefront. So we will continue that trend.
Thank you very much. On 6.6, I was just inquiring, I guess this would go to Janice. Do we have the naloxone kits in our facilities?
No, we do not, and I would have to review the legislation in detail to determine whether or not we would be captured by that regulation or legislation. There is nothing obvious to suggest that we would, but we would still need to review that.
So you'll take a look. Okay, thank you. On the other, and these are both related. So and I guess this would be to Robert directly. So the province put forward a number of changes. Well, first of all, they had the task force, the housing task force. AMO wasn't overly impressed with some of the recommendations from that housing task force. The province took some of those recommendations and they put legislation into the legislature that would result in townships or municipalities having their fees clawed back if they didn't meet certain timelines. It provides new powers to the minister in terms of setting regs on plans of subdivision. It changes or mandates that all site plan approvals have to be delegated. We keep a certain portion of those to council, so that would change. It creates a new mechanism that is similar to a ministerial zoning order. It's got a different name for it, but it puts some consultation requirements in place. And it creates some new transparency provisions in respect of development charges. So my question, and it may be, the answer may be, well, that you're going to need to come back to council, and that would be a fair answer, as to whether we've had a chance to look at what some of the ramifications of that legislation would be, both in terms of demands on the time, staff time, and costs, and whether or not you've had a chance to take a look at that, or if you haven't, if you're going to have a chance perhaps to come back with a report to council, or maybe you want to wait until the legislation's actually passed. Anyways, I don't know, Robert, if you had a chance to take a look at it at all.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my planner pair and myself have had some discussions with regard to that proposed legislation, in particular the clawback of fees item. Generally, what happens when it comes to not getting an application approved in the set timeframes is generally because of the peer review processes, where we've provided comments back to the applicant and they have failed to, in a timely fashion, address the concerns raised by our consultants. So that's the thing that typically would push us out of those timeframes where that mechanism could potentially be utilized. So that is sort of concerning on our part. We've had some preliminary conversations about how to approach that with potentially moving some of that peer review into the pre-consultation phase, but I don't have any clear direction on how we will approach that if it is approved and brought into legislation. Obviously, if and when that does get approved, we'll have to sort of explore and find a way forward that protects the interest of the municipality.
Do you see any concerns about the delegation of site plan control?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would prefer to have some of the more complex site developments approved by council, as it has been done traditionally, but I suppose if that's what's thrust upon us, we'll have to deal with it.
And I guess, and I'm sorry because I've lost my sheet of paper. What they have a new name for an MZO under this legislation. I forget what it's called. But I'm assuming we're going to have some sort of internal processes on how we will handle an approach that utilizes that new tool. Would that be probably correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I don't have an answer on that one specifically. I'll have to look into that specific issue in a bit more depth and get back to you.
Okay, thank you. That is all the questions that I had. So we'll take a motion to receive all of those consent items. Donna, seconded by Anita. All those in favor? That's carried. So we have no petitions. We'll move on to our portfolio reports, and we will start with Donna.
Thank you very much. My first item is to report on fire, and Gord has already stolen my thunder, that they've already started their extended training in compliance with the provincial directive, and I'm glad to hear that everybody's so enthusiastic. The library board, most of our discussions recently have been around the viability of a volunteer dinner. Initial plans are being investigated to have the dinner on the ice surface floor of the Ennismore Community Center in order to provide expanded place for distance separation. The date set aside for that is Monday, June the 20th, and we are considering a boxed dinner. Due to recent COVID activities, we are putting a little bit of a pause on that and not putting out sign-up sheets for the volunteers yet. And one thought just today is, if we cannot get together as a group, we would still purchase the box dinners and have members of the library board at the community center to pass them out to volunteers as they come in, and then take them home. Other years, we've given them gift certificates to local restaurants. So we thought this, if we can't have the dinner, the box dinner would be nice for them to take home and have for their supper. The Police Services Board and the rec committees are not meeting until late April and early May. And I have link stats for January, February, and March. January, Route 31, 320, Route 32, 77. February, Route 31, 421, and Route 32, 179. So that's certainly positive compared to the month before. And March, Route 31, 485, Route 32, 352. So it would seem that ridership is definitely related to weather conditions. And then I have a personal announcement that I would like to make. I would like to officially inform staff, council, and members of the public that I will not be running in the 2022 election. I've enjoyed my 20 years on council and will miss the work and all the great people that I've met doing the job as Ennismore Ward Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. And as we move forward to the balance of the term, we'll have an opportunity to recognize those 20 years of service. So Sherry, you would be next. Normally you're sitting in order. Now I got to figure out where you are in the screen. So Sherry, go ahead.
Thank you, through you. Nikki Polchinski, who's an owner of Shop the Lake on Chemong Road, has been nominated for the 30th annual RBC Canadian Women Entrepreneur Awards. The RBC Canadian Women Entrepreneur Awards is the premier national awards program celebrating the achievements of the most successful. It's in its 30th year, and top awards are given for demonstrating excellence from economic growth to social change, from local to global reach across multiple sectors. So there's some very talented people living in our township. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry.
Thank you. Public Works, they're continuing the sweeping right now. As always, they start with the asphalt roads. So some of them in Bridge North, they've already done a bunch in Lakefield. And then the order will be, write this down because I don't want the calls. The order will be Ennismore, then Bridge North, then South Smith, then North Smith, and then Lakefield. So again, all asphalt roads, which are basically Bridge North and Ennismore, some of the ones at Bridge North, and then they'll get to the tar and chips. So don't bug me. Mike Richardson in the Park and Rec Department. Just let me find this here. I just texted from earlier today. So all the ice is now out, and they're starting to refurbish the sport court. Say that fast. Sport courts now. Got like a mouthful of marbles. So they're refurbishing that stuff now, getting started because the weather's good, and then the parks work, they'll start up rather soon. And if I could just publicly say to Donna, thank you for your 20 years.
Thank you, Jerry. And Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll reiterate, echo what everybody else has said. We're going to miss you, but congratulations on a great 20 years, and you've done real service, great service to your community, and I'm sure you will be very much missed. With regards to sustainability, I'm looking forward to meeting our new staff person. There's still all this COVID stuff kind of going on, but when we're actually allowed to meet at an extended period of time. I'm looking forward to meeting her. With regards to the Heritage Committee, at a future meeting, our committee has, well, two people of our committee have put together an extensive list that will be presenting to council for consideration on the register. And I'd just like to send out a big shout out, happy 100th birthday to Lois Keller on April 13th, which is tomorrow. I just want to, anybody who knows Lois knows that she's a real gem in our community and has done so much good things over the years. So happy birthday, Lois.
Thank you very much, Anita. I'm going to do my portfolio update. I got a few things here. First of all, if I could touch on the county, it has been a very, and Sherry will attest to this, a very intense period at the county. So we're trying to wrap up our transportation master plan. So I spoke previously to the decision about the Ward Street corridor. Also in it is the recognition of the need for what's referred to as a second crossing of the river in the Lakefield area to relieve some of the traffic. There are also a number of key intersections that require upgrading. So that transportation master plan will hopefully come to a conclusion sometime in the next 2 to 3 months. We're also working on our development charges bylaw at the county level. It expires at the end of or beginning of May, so we need a new one put in place. We had an open house last week on that. I think we have a special council meeting on Thursday to deal with it again. Council has in front of it a maximum potential rate, and council needs to make a decision as to whether it will use the maximum rate, some amount less than the maximum rate, and whether it'll be phased in over a period of time. In terms of signs, we've dealt with the whole issue of continuing with signage. And so if I understand it correctly, and Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, for the upcoming provincial election, the same rules will apply that applied for the federal election. And we continue to work on the issue of signage within 400 meters of a county road allowance. So that still remains a work in progress. We also accepted the growth analysis, which is a component of the official plan at the county level. So it projects a population increase for Selwyn. And Janice, if I get any of this wrong, please intervene. It projects an increase of a little over 3,000 until 2051. These are all projections, by the way, so that would be a 17% increase. They estimate that would require the construction of just short of 2,000 new homes, 1,950. That growth is divided into 4 buckets. So there's it has a notional allocation in what's called the designated greenfield area. So these are areas within the service settlement area that are available for development. So that would be Lakefield South as an example. It also has an allocation for the for intensification in the built-up area of Lakefield. So that's a smaller envelope. That's the area that's already developed. It has an allocation for rural settlement areas and an allocation for rural areas. So that's all laid out in the plan. The report concludes that we have sufficient land to accommodate growth. It also projects an amount for employment land. All of that will find its way into the official plan. One of the things that's important to remember is that if our growth is exceeding the plan, you don't turn away growth. You simply exceed what the projection is. So that's important to remember. It's a notional projection, trying to use it for planning purposes, but you don't turn away growth because it's more than what you expected. So that's something that we're working. In terms of public health, you may have noticed that Peterborough Public Health has put out what it calls its community risk profile. It's the first one in the province to do it. I think it's still the only one in the province to do it. The results indicate that we're currently at a high risk. Yesterday, the Medical Officer of Health in Peterborough made it clear, and so did, I believe, the Medical Officer of Health for Ontario, although I didn't see the press conference, that we are in a sixth wave. In terms of numbers of cases, it's now projected out of wastewater analysis as opposed to the testing that we were doing in the past. And the impacts are being felt in various institutions, primarily through absenteeism, as people are having to stay home when they get ill. Hospitalizations are up in our area, and there was a briefing by Public Health for area mayors, chiefs, heads of large organizations, where Dr. Piggott had a chance to review that, and I know that our staff was at that as well. There was a federal budget that came out not that long ago. There's a couple of interesting items in there that we should take a look at. The one that sort of struck me was something they call a multi-generational house rental tax credit, which would provide up to $7,500 for the construction of a secondary unit for a senior or for a person of a disability. So that's not a township initiative, that's a personal initiative. So, but I when I was reading the budget, I saw that and noted that. So that's my report. But I also, if I could, colleagues, impose upon like Donna, I have a personal note that I'd like to make. So it's been, for me, almost 30 years since I first considered running for public office. And I've been fortunate in those 30 years to have served in office for over 20 of them as an elected official, and an additional 5 as a staff member, political staff member. So it's been a while. Next week, I'm going to turn 69, and I will be entering my 70th year. I know the warden hates when I refer to 69 as entering your 70th year, but I'm going to say it anyways. I have come to the conclusion, after long discussions, that it is truly the time for me to retire. And that this time that I do it, not just in name, but in practice as well. And I say that because some people have heard me say I will retire before. So I too want to let people know that I will not be running for mayor this fall, and for that matter, any other political office. Although this will be it's a difficult decision for me, for sure. And although there'll be lots of time to speak to this later, I did want to thank all of my colleagues on council. You've been a great group of people to serve with, and we may not have always agreed, but we've always had a common passion for the township and for the people of Selwyn, and I've really appreciated your support. I also want to extend that to all of the staff as well. We are blessed with a great group of men and women who every day go out there and serve the residents of our township and support council. So I wanted to take this opportunity to thank them. I'll do it again over as the term winds down. And I'd like to thank the residents of Selwyn. They're a big group of people. I'm been proud to represent them and proud to be their mayor. We've been through a difficult time, colleagues, with COVID and all of the challenges it's faced, and our residents have been there for us, but for each other. And I just wanted to mention that. I would be not being accurate if I didn't say that I'm going to miss it, because I am going to miss it. But it is time to go. And there is a long list of things that I've always said I'll get to tomorrow. Well, tomorrow doesn't get here unless you do some of it today. and it is time for that. So thank you, colleagues, for giving me an opportunity to say that. We will then, because now I'm totally lost, and I will find, here we go. I knew I had it here somewhere. So is there any other new or unfinished business? Sherry?
Thank you. I want to take this opportunity to thank Andy, Donna, and Jerry, who has already given his notice that he would not be running, for your commitment to the township over the years. I am proud to call you friends, and that includes Anita too, but we're saying goodbye to three of our colleagues here, and I'm going to miss you, all of you. I also want to take the opportunity to announce that I'm going to be running for mayor of Selwyn Township in the next municipal election this fall. The 3 members of our council not seeking re-election, we will need some stability, continuity, and experience in the next term at both the township and the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Anita?
I would like to echo what Sherry has to say, that Donna, Andy, and Jerry. I have so appreciated working with you on these past terms of council. I've learned so much from you, and your wisdom and your humor and your bluntness at times, Jerry. I'm not going to make a statement at this point, but I did want to say to Donna, Andy, and Jerry, and we are going to miss you. And Sherry, congratulations for putting your name forward for mayor.
Well, thank you, colleagues. Donna, did you want to say something? No? Oh, you're just waiting. Okay. And yes, I would be remiss if, and I did see the piece in the paper, and Jerry, I just wanted to recognize that you are also made the decision not to run. I know how difficult a decision that would be, but you've served the community well in this role for 8 years. Thank you. Any other unfinished or new business? Not seeing any. We have some bylaws to deal with. So Madam Clerk, I think, is still with us. So we have the holding removal for concession 8, lot 24. That's 1824, the 8th line. We have the item for 187 Kildare Lane. Now remember, that will only come into force at a later time. We have the agreement with Maximum Protection for bylaw enforcement services to appoint them. And we have Lane's consolidated tax rate that we are needing to move. And Anita wants to move that. And a seconder is Donna. All those in favor? Those are carried. We then need a confirming bylaw from Sherry, seconded by Donna. All those in favor? That's carried. And we need adjournment. Jerry, seconded by Anita. All those in favor? We're done. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you very much, staff, for all your support and hard work tonight. And we'll be talking to you soon. Good night, everybody. Thank you.